We're hanging out today with the Romantics, Mike and Richard Cole, the original members. Where did you kind of start the whole Romantics thing? Were you guys meet in high school? Did you meet on the road? How did it go about? Other bands?
Pretty much started, me and Jimmy, the drummer, the original drummer, we went to school together, went to high school together over on the east side, far east side, way over there by the Algier Theater, over there by Finney High School. Finney High School we went to, over by Denby and all that on the east side. And Rich came around with Wally, but me and Jimmy had been playing through high school from the 8th grade, and we were playing Notre Dame dances, and I was playing St. Ambrose high school dances on the east side. And then we teamed up with a few other musicians, Robert Gillespie, who's been around town playing with numerous other artists, and with Scott Morgan and so on. And Bobby East played with it. We played with him through the 70s and stuff. Me and Jimmy actually put a band together with Peter James, who was with a punk band from the Ramrods from the early 80s, when the Romantics were gigging around. But me and Jimmy had been together forever, and we had met Wally, but we had this other band, and we went to New York. We went to New York. We put these songs together. It was the early version of the Motor City Rockers, with little Stevie on guitar. I was playing bass. And we called Hilly Crystal up at CBGBs, and we got a gig there. So we rented a truck, and we drove there. This was like 1976 or 5 or 6. And we got a U-Haul truck. We threw his drums, and he had this drum platform, big drum platform, and our amps and stuff in there. And specially made, perfect to hold his drums tight to the floor. You know, strapped down. You know, they don't go anywhere. You know, he puts 10 coats of paint on it, white paint. We drove down through Ohio and up to through Pennsylvania and to New York, 660 miles, I think it is. We've driven there so many times, I know the mileage. We got with a truck broke down in Ohio.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Things are definitely going to break.
Of course.
1 hour out.
Yeah, across the border. Truck broke down. We had to get another truck. It was like 3 or 4 or 5 hours or something. We unloaded from one to the other, and then we drove off. We drove off and went right on to New York. And we got to New York, and we set up. We played CBGBs. Well, we got there, set up, played CBGBs, and I met Sylvain. He met people. We played a set, and it was a big deal for us. You know, we've been reading about CBGBs in Hip Radar magazine. Right. We knew about Max's Kansas City, you know, with David Bowie and Iggy and everything. Todd Rundgren all hanging out there. And there was some other show, I think Johnny Thunders was playing, the Heartbreakers or something. We went some art center. Okay. He played the Tough Darts, and a bunch of bands played. I think Sylvain had a band or something. But anyway, the next day we were going to leave and everything, and I think we left the drum platform with the guitar player. We drove back, and we found out later on he threw it in the river.
Right.
Jimmy wasn't happy about that. But anyway, that band kind of broke up. That thing, we just gosh. We were always looking for a lead singer. We had LSD, lead singer disease.
Wow. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, had to have that Mick Jagger or Robert Plant, you know. But thankfully, with the whole new wave and punk scene, you could do anything you wanted. You didn't have to be Led Zeppelin. We didn't want to be Led Zeppelin. Right. We learned from all that stuff, Yardbirds, and but we were getting into Mata Hoople and Roxy Music and all the New York bands, and Rich will tell you.
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier. Rich, we were talking about, you guys were like considered a power pop band of all things back in the day. And I think you're probably the only power pop band besides Madonna, I think, during that day, you know.
Yeah, and to be labeled as that, exactly. You know. But I really don't think that we were that. It was just a label that people said they had to categorize you somehow. Right.
Well, they try to throw you in this new wave, and I'm like, no way, they're rock and roll.
Oh yeah, and we were exactly. We misconstrued stuff, and your audience does that too, because you know they're trying to understand you, and you're trying to convey what you're trying to do, and we kind of talked about this earlier. The MC5, the same way. You know, they had all of these recordings that really didn't sound like them.
Right.
Okay. Right. So because when you saw them live, they were like, holy smoke! I mean, they were just like, you know, they were so powerful live, and then, you know, on a couple of their albums, they just sound like a power pop band.
Right,
if I
right,
could
right.
categorize them.
Right, exactly. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, they came up at the time when we were kids, man. We were going to their free concerts and stuff at Tarter Field and over on the west side, over in Dearborn. There was a park over there. They always played on Cherry Hill Street or something. And then Ann Arbor at Gallup Park and all that. And you had the Rationals, you had the Up, you had the Assemblage, you had Bob Hodge, you had T. Garner Band. I could go down the list. Iggy and the Stooges and all that. Iggy Pop and the Psychedelic Stooges. And anyway, we came back from New York, and at that time, the punk thing was brewed up, you know, right. 75, 76. And we were loving the energy of it. We're reading about it in New York. It was happening in London. It was happening in L.A. So it started to brew up everywhere. And we got back, and I saw this record came out. The Flamin' Groovies record came out, and it was a Mersey sound. It was back to songs, not just jamming and progressive rock with long guitar solos, with long keyboard solos and drum solos. The songs were young people wanted to play more. Young bands wanted to do shorter songs,
and right to the point, and making just like the Kinks, the Hollies, and all of our predecessors that just like wrote great songs, you know, in 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
So that was the big bang for us. The punk scene, and we had grown up in the 60s and early 70s with them MC5 and all that. MC5 were very political. That's why they wanted to clean them up. That's why the records didn't sound. Yeah. They wanted to clean them up. There was revolutionaries, and talking politics and in their songs. And so I saw that thing. I rode my bike over to Jimmy's. I go, we can do this, man. And check this out, the jam. Look at the look, the tight pants, the string tie, pointy shoes, and we go, yeah, well. What about that guy Wally that we met last year? Maybe we should give him a call, see how he's singing. We didn't know how he sang. We were in his at our rehearsal studio. This guy Serious Trixon came over and brought his recorder. You might have been there, and he wanted us to record his stuff. So Wally was singing a backup. Right. So I heard after we got back from CBGBs in August or something. I got it written on a diary. Go call Wally for rehearsal or something. It says on a diary. Right. And I heard he's playing in Hamtramck, and he's with this 50s kind of like rock and roll thing, and a couple girl singers, a sax player, and I didn't go in. I didn't buy a ticket or anything like that. I went around to the back, and there was a window, and climbed up and stooped up and looked in. I said, "Oh, is that them? Yeah, oh yeah, they're on. They're on. Okay." And I got down again, and I went back up. I held myself up there. They did a song. I go, "Wow, he's holding the crowd pretty good." He was actually directing the, getting everything rolling. I go, so I went back. Back then, I didn't have a cell phone, right? Oh, no. So I called Jimmy flags.
Okay, white flag is good.
So I called Jimmy. I go, yeah, it looked like he held the crowd pretty good, and we called him up, and he brought Rich over. Oh, okay. So we kind of didn't know yet. It wasn't Romantics yet, but we jammed, and we had done this other thing together with the girl singer for a minute.
Yeah,
that kind of fizzled,
wasn't that Nikki? From Nikki? No?
Detroit.
Oh, okay. All right.
But that whole idea with the Mersey sound and the jam and the punk thing, that's what really kind of was initially got the romantic.
Let me tell you my version of this. So then Wally goes, we're having a problem with their PA, and we need this to be checked, and why don't you come over and check it out? So I'm over there, and I'm going through everything, and so they were rehearsing with Dee Dee and before the Romantics. So they leave, and then, because then Mike was playing bass, and then,
actually before we went to CBGBs, before we played New York.
Okay.
And then we came back, and that broke up. That one broke up too.
But then, okay. So I'm there, and Mike's playing guitar, and Wally's playing guitar, and Jimmy's looking at me. He goes, "Rich, you're a bass player, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, there's a bass over there." I'm like, yeah, there's a bass. Okay, so I get down there, and I think we rehearsed for about 3 hours, something like that, and we actually wrote maybe a part of a song, and So then we, you know, the practice ended, and Jimmy goes, "So what are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I guess coming here."
Oh, there you go.
So
Nice.
it was just like that.
This wasn't yet the Romantics, but this is how we all met and kind of gelled.
Yeah.
And a few months later, after the New York thing, we got together again. We got together and it worked. And it worked. We just I had a bunch of songs. I had cassette tapes. I brought them over. I showed them to Wally. Their basic ideas, and we'd throw each other titles, and everybody'd throw a title here, a title there, and so maybe some words here and there. Everybody, and we made them into something. So we had about 4 or 5 songs, and we just kept going.
I just wanted to say that I think more than anything, we were all on the same page. Like it was, like all of our music love was right from the same doctor. You know, it just, it was amazing because Wally and I had all this kind of not. Wally loved all of these bands you never even heard of, and probably still might not have heard of, like the Pretty Things or the Move. All these bands from England that had all this music out, and it was so cool. And I'm going, well, why don't you hear it here? You know, it's kind of weird. But
The thing was with me and Marinos, we're always together jamming since high school and writing, working how to learn how to write. But we were always jamming, so that kind of filtered into songwriting, and we became songwriters. And we had this, like I said, the Big Bang was we had this. Okay, that's what we're going for. That kind of song, choruses, chorus people could remember, great grooves, a lot of attack, the MC5, the Detroit attack. And you know, and
we used to jam too, man, a lot.
So you guys' first gig was actually you opened up for the MC5.